Hello students, I hope y'all are doing okay today. Again, we miss y'all being here. I am having to do a lot of extra work here to kind of keep the greenhouse going without you students being here. I want to thank my son Luke again for doing the filming today, as he did the other day. If you haven't had a chance to go back and watch the video of me with the cattle, that would be great. I realized two things after watching that video. That number one, I realized I have always talked with a strong southern accent, but I did not realize how strong it was, and how much I had gained about 20 pounds since I started working here at Dade County about 2 years ago. So, got to lose some weight. But today's video is about growing vegetables and flowers. And we may have more people who are interested in growing vegetables this year because of the not going out to eat maybe as much, and thinking about staying away from people and having their own garden. Right here we have where we have sown some tomato seeds. We have three different kinds right there. One's called Sweet Million, makes a little tiny little tomato tomato or salad tomato. And then we have one called a Park Swapper, which is a great one, and one called a Mountain Fresh. And the Park Swapper and the Mountain Fresh are very, very favorable tomatoes with people who grow tomatoes for a living, who try to make a living or make money growing vegetables and selling them. Park Swappers and Mountain Fresh are very good tomatoes because they are very disease resistant. And some people don't realize that some plants are genetically predisposed to be resistant to certain diseases. And those particular varieties of tomato are very resistant to diseases. Of course, we're probably all thinking right now, I wish I was resistant to coronavirus. But maybe some of us are. But the vegetable I'm going to show planting today is a tomato that many people are familiar with called a Better Boy tomato. Now, tomato seeds are very small, and I'm going to pour out a bunch of them in my hand, but I'm not going to use them all. We have already made some little lines in the mix here that we have, and this mix of soil, it's not really soil that you would find in your yard. It's called Pro Mix, okay? It's called Pro Mix. It's very light. It's kind of a fluffy material, and water drains through it really well, and roots are able to penetrate that soil very, very well. Now, we've made some little lines just to give us an added benefit of trying to stagger out those seeds and not get too many together. So if you're going to plant these seeds at home, you can start them out in trays like this. You can make wooden trays. You can use pots, just about anything. You just want to be able to let the water drain through it. The water doesn't need to back up in it, so you don't need to use a jar or something that doesn't have a bottom in it that water can't drain out. Now, tomato seeds and pepper seeds, which are the most two common vegetables people probably put out by seeds and getting them started first, usually on things like beans and okra and sweet corn. That stuff is put out straight seeds into the garden. They don't start it here and then move it and reset it out just because there's so many plants. But they don't need to be very deep. About 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, which is not very far, is all that a tomato seed needs to be out. So basically all I'm going to do is, after I've dropped them in those cracks, is I'm just going to pat it. That's it. Now, I need to water it, but I don't want to water it very deep, okay? I just want to give it a little shower. I'm going to do that right quick. Just a real shallow drink of water. We don't want the water to be so much weight that it drives the seeds down in the ground. You can see that I don't have a whole lot of water pressure on there. It's just drizzling out. And that's it. And they're good to go for about 24 hours like that, at least. They might make 48 before they need water again. We're going to move on over and see where we have a lot of vegetables here at the Dade County greenhouse. Some of these plants down here have just started coming up. We have more tomatoes down through here, and we even have some tomatoes and plants. They're ready to be transplanted into bigger pots grow there for a day or two or three, and then let folks take them out and put them in their garden. Some of the tomato plants that we're growing here are called patio tomatoes, which means they're made to stay in a container. You don't have to set them out if you don't want to. You can leave them in a 2-gallon container, and they'll produce tomatoes on your back step or your patio or somewhere on your sidewalk there. Now, if we come through the greenhouse, if you were in economics, you would learn that there is microclimates and then there is macroclimates. I'm sorry, macroeconomics and microeconomics, okay? Macro studies a broad area, micro a smaller area. Well, there is micro and macro climates, okay? This plant right here is Vinca. It is a favorite of Miss Meeks in the office, and we're growing these in her honor because she loves Vinca. This is a table of Vinca, and this is a table of Vinca. Now, they do incredibly well in hot, sunny environments, very hot. And the reason I bring up the micro and the macro climate, a good friend of mine who is an expert at school greenhouses, knows more than I'll ever know. He takes and puts slats up in the top of his greenhouse and grows them up in the height of the greenhouse. Because what does hot air do? Hot air goes up. It creates a more microclimate that's conducive to these plants. And you'll notice I have these up on the highest table that we have in the greenhouse. We have some other plants here. This one, we're excited about it. It's called Vampire Blood Calibracheia. And some people pronounce that Calibracheia different ways. But it'll make a real thick, pretty hanging basket before long. As we come on through, you'll see we have verbena, ivies, we got geraniums in 6-inch pots that are doing good. We have petunias, a lot of different hanging baskets, some kinds of ferns. We have dahlias. One of my favorite here, coleus, okay? Across over here we have begonias, and as you can see, more geraniums, okay? Over here we have impatiens and more begonias, celosia, some beautiful begonia baskets over there, both ground baskets and hanging baskets. And then we get back in here, we have marigolds and several other different kinds of plants. So in a few days, we're going to have the greenhouse open for people to be able to come get plants. Now let's talk a little bit more about vegetables, okay? You want to put vegetables out in the right environment. If you ever look up books, it'll say plants, most plants do best in moist, well-drained soil. Well, how can it be moist and well-drained at the same time? It means you have to water it a good bit, and it needs to, that water filter through there and not just stay there. The roots of those plants don't need to stay wet. Now, more plants die because of people overwatering them than they do underwatering them usually. So you have to watch and see. And we're going to look at this plant which has been laid out here. It's overwatered right now. It doesn't need water. You can tell that ground is brown, okay? But we can go here and see where this one is lighter brown. Now, it doesn't need a lot of water, but it's in a little more need of water. So let that ground dry out a little bit before you put more water on it. And just like watering a plant, the water goes into that plant and nourishes that plant through the roots, not through the surface of the plant, okay? We don't take a shower and not need to drink water. We don't go swimming and then not need a glass of water on a hot day. The reason is we take water in through our mouth. Roots or plants take it in through the tips of the roots, then the feeder roots. It's almost like they have a little mouth at the end of those roots. It's just reaching out into the moisture, into the soil to poke in and take in nutrients and take in water. So not getting the plant wet is preferable if you can do that. Okay? In fact, many plants grow well in drip irrigation in the desert because water on a plant, and it just sits there on the plant, creates the potential for disease problems. For example, what grows in your shower stall? usually a little mold because water just sits there. So you want to keep water from setting. Now in the greenhouse environment here, we're not getting natural wind, are we? That's why we have to create wind, okay? Through the use of fans and vents in the back of the greenhouse. A greenhouse has to be very, control that environment very much. I have tried my best to not water any time when the plants don't have at least 2 or 3 hours of daylight still to dry off after I water them. So when you set plants out, you want to watch and make sure you don't set them out in an environment that's they're not going to do well at. And most plants, it's just too short of a time or take too long for me to tell you about each plant. But you can study on it, and of course if you look up stuff on the internet about a specific plant. But when you're planting the vegetable seeds, 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch on most plants, and on bigger seeds like a cantaloupe or a squash, sometimes they can go to 1/4 to 1/2 an inch deep in plant, okay? Now, the next lesson we're going to have is going to be on soils and fertilizers. And soils are great here. It's an interesting place to study because we have such different terrain here with valleys and mountains, and it creates lots of different soil types with lots of different soil structure and lots of different amounts of fertility. And that fertility is what we're going to talk about in the next lesson, which we will talk about soil types, and then we're going to talk about fertilizer, how to make your plants grow better. So we'll talk to you again in a day or two. Thank you, and I appreciate you watching.